We also.
Yes. Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's like the magic of teaching where you wait for the lull and then that's where you begin. Good to see you all this evening. Welcome to our May 18th, 2026 board meeting. I'm going to call this meeting to order and establish that we have a quorum beginning with a roll call vote. Juan Carlos.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
John.
Here.
Christopher.
Here.
And I'm here as well. We do have a quorum. Juan Carlos, has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes.
Our first meeting in new roles. Thank you for that. To help ensure that we're centering our board work around our shared values and serving our students, we begin each of our board meetings by reading our district's equity framework and the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement, which can be found at the top of the agenda. I will actually read those for us this evening. Our VASD Educational Equity Framework reads, in the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. And our Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement reads, there are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand. Moving to the remainder of the agenda. So board meeting is just drawing your attention to the remainder of tonight's agenda. I'd accept a motion to approve if there are no amendments.
So moved.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Is there a second?
Second.
So we'll go Christopher on that second. All those in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been approved. So we get to begin with some student recognitions this evening. Dr. Clarity, I will turn it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. We're very excited to be able to open today's day with our student recognition. And today we have multiple honorees that we would like to celebrate on behalf of the Verona Area School District. First is the Distributive Education Clubs of America, DECA, top 10 global finalists. And congratulations goes to Kendall Schaefer and Grayson Palmbach. I saw Kendall. Okay. Congratulations. Both who recently achieved the top 10 global semifinalist status at the DECA International Career Development Conference, or ICDC. At ICDC, they competed, in the Financial Literacy Project event. And after advancing through competition rounds and presenting their project to international judges, they are recognized as top 10 global finalists. This distinction places them among approximately the top 3% of the 26,000 competitors attending the conference, and within the top 500 of 315,000 DECA students worldwide. That's phenomenal. Their project focused on promoting financial literacy through an interactive initiative. reality check designed to educate students on real-world financial decision-making. Reaching the international finalist level required months of preparation, organization, leadership, and collaboration. From planning and executing their event to preparing professional written materials and presenting at the international level, this accomplishment reflects a substantial amount of dedication and work both inside and outside of school. As one of the most competitive student leadership organizations in the world, DECA provides students with opportunities to apply business, finance, marketing, and entrepreneurship and skills in professional settings. Advancing to the top 10 internationally is an achievement that reflects positively on the students involved and on the strength of our school district's academic and CTE programs. Congratulations again to Kendall and Grayson. Staff rep is here.
Yes. I mean, I'm so proud of both of these students. They did hours and hours and hours of work. Grayson was a big factor in creating an actual app that ran a real simulation for our avid students, avid juniors and seniors here, where we did like a full day of financial simulations. Then Kendall did all of the preparation of the written materials and the actual running of the event day. So I'm super proud of them and all of the students who went and competed at ICDC this year. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And congratulations again.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here as well, so we
Yeah.
can celebrate. Thank you.
Next, we want to recognize the four graduates for the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, Superintendent Advisory Council, and I think I have one or two here. Members in attendance, but these are graduating seniors who will also wear their cords at the graduation ceremony in June. Today, we'd like to celebrate Faith Rush, Samaya Nuyer, Anavea Gonzalez, Sydney Moore, and Aaron Yarborough. Just to note that both Faith and Aaron represented us at the Wisconsin State Conference and presented on the Superintendent Advisory, as well as with this being my 5th year as superintendent. These two have been with me all 5 years since their beginning when they came through us through Savannah Oaks. So they're both Savannah Oaks middle school students. So congratulations to our graduating seniors, and we look forward to recognizing them at next week's medal ceremony and again at graduation with their cords. So congratulations to our senior class. All right, now we get to do staff recognition. And this is one of the times where we have to jump in because our communications department always does our slides for us. But today's celebration is in recognition of our communications department. So in celebration of our communications team, we'd like to recognize Karen Barreto Lozano, and in attendance, Marcy Pfeiffer Soderblum, our public information officer, and their award-winning team that really helped tell the narrative of the Verona School District, all the materials that go out front, a lot of communication that you get as families, all are on both on behalf of the Board of Education and on behalf of the Verona School District, come through this amazing team. So it's time to step back and be recognized for your accomplishments. Congratulations to Marcy and Karen.
Award-winning is literally. And thank you on behalf of the board as well, and Marcy and Karen, wherever she is. We appreciate also the support that you give the board and all of the leadership team. Thank you.
They recognize how hard it is to secretly celebrate your communications team.
How you slide in?
Yeah. All right.
No, I'm not ready for this one.
Yeah.
You're all lovely, and I'm not ready for this one. So I'm going to let you start.
Today, we get to do the bittersweet moment of celebrating our retirement of just an amazing group of educators here in the Verona School District. Just the years of experience, what they have meant to thousands and thousands of students, what they've meant to thousands and thousands of families across the Verona School District just cannot be explained or measured. Today, those in attendance will receive a small token of appreciation, but it doesn't even come close to measuring their impact that they've had on thousands of lives throughout their career. So while it's a bitter and it's an emotional moment for all of us here to see these great educators move into retirement, it's also celebrations for retirement well earned and well deserved, and knowing that they will always be a part of the Verona School District family is what keeps us whole. So from there, I'll turn it over to the board for any comments, and then we'll play their retirement video.
Okay, I'd like to echo similar sentiments, but also want to just highlight, not only have all these educators had an impact on families and students, but fellow colleagues and beginning educators. Every single one of these people, particularly those in the room, have supported up and coming beginning educators, have been leaders in their buildings with their colleagues. The imprint that you've all left on so many individuals, especially fellow teachers, I just hold all of that in such high regard, and I'm so appreciative for all of the hours in the service that you've done beyond what is classroom service, beyond what is contracted hours, all of the things that have just been so monumental, that your impact will be felt for decades to come. Much gratitude on behalf of myself and the board. Anyone else can, of course, share.
Great.
I made it through that. Awesome. While you shift to a new position, I'm going to add I say it every year now, but it's the honest to goodness truth. I look forward to running into all of you after retirement, where you will be getting progressively younger looking. It is honestly the absolute truth. It's fascinating. So cheers to that.
All right, here in attendance to receive our retirees get a choice of an engraved cutting board or food board from our class that's built here in-house at Verona High School. They can do a plaque of recognition, or you choose from a donation through the Verona Area Foundation. So receiving a Online, we have watching Julie B., who chose a honey gourd from Core Knowledge. Here in attendance, we have Karen Bowers-Caddy. Kathy Collier. Diana Lynn. Lori Martin. And we want to do this?
No.
Mr. Todd Brother. Doggone it, that was hard. Again, on behalf of the Verona School District, thank you for so much to all the years of service. We have students here among us today, just to represent some of the smiles and the accomplishments that you've had on behalf of our district. But knowing that you're moving into retirement and be able to enjoy life to its fullest, we know that'll come to fruition with time and family. But yeah, that was tough. But thank you to all of you. And Yeti. Yeah.
And so at this point of the meeting, we often say, if you've been a guest in the space, you can certainly stay in and listen. We often typically shift to Chad Weezy. He loves coming. I know. And you always tend to have to come in with very informational, important topics. But yes, we're going to shift to the superintendent's report and welcome Chad Weezy. But again, this is a time if any of you would like to dismiss. Yes, thank you, retirees. Thank you, DECA students and leaders. And welcome, Chad.
And Robin.
And Robin. That's good. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Robin.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
Good to see you. I do have a guest tonight. Robin Billig is our now almost 2 years in food nutrition director. We get a chance to hear from her. Excited that she's with us and wanted to more than anything kick off and say how proud I am of her work. The fact that, and Robin will tell you a little bit more, but has a very long history with our school district, seamlessly slid into the role of the directorship, and it is not an easy job. Between staffing, making sure that you're putting something in front of a 6-year-old every day that they're excited to eat, and tonight, proving that we have to try to balance a budget. So in some regards, Robin almost runs her own little mini business or school district. We have Fund 50 that in theory should be self-funded by essentially what the commodity Robin's buying, what she's turning it into in terms of healthy offerings for our students, and really what we get from families who pay a la carte or are paying on a daily or weekly basis, and families who qualify for federal and state reimbursement. That is really Robin's work. And then behind the scenes, essentially running her own mini 8 or 9 restaurants, making sure it's staffed every day, and we've got point of sale software and so forth. It is a big job, and we're incredibly lucky to have her. And you're going to get a chance to hear a little bit more about kind of her journey here. And she's certainly here to answer questions if we've got them tonight. Outcomes for our presentation this evening, we're going to give you a little State of the Union in terms of where we're at with 25-26 participation and what we've got going on with the finance component. That's really the main reason we're here this evening. We do have some slight changes we're recommending that take place, and we're interested in board discussion about kind of our story over the last few years financially, and kind of where we're recommending really to get in line with the market in Dane County. And more than anything, I again want to make sure everyone understands Robin is really running her own business that has to, at the end of the day, at a minimum, have a balanced budget. That's the annual goal. She's got something called fund balance, just in her world, we're going to reference this evening. But for any of you that are throwing the $4.50 gas in your gas tank and running to the grocery store and trying to do it for the same amount you did it the year before, it isn't happening. It's not happening for Robin either, and that's why we've got to make some adjustments this evening. Robin, before we get into the details on the presentation, thoughts, perspectives in terms of where you're at, and I think the board would appreciate just kind of knowing your story a little bit more.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I've been with the district for 27 years. So 2 years I've been director, the past 2 years. And I must say, for the first year, we really hit the ground running. We implemented a nutrient analysis program. We slid over into a new online menu system. We ended up getting an audit my first year in. We hadn't had our last audit since 2018. So
The state and a federal audit.
a state and federal. So yeah, so right after I found out we were getting an audit, USDA sent me an email and asked if they could do an intense survey with Verona, and that we were chosen, so I couldn't say no. So that could have lasted up to 3 years, but I was only in it for a year and a half. So every time they sent an email, wanted data, came to visit me, I had to sit down and talk to them and give them the information they were looking for. So I was actually excused from that in December was my last meeting with them. So it didn't last 3 years, which was nice, but a year and a half, it was a year-and-a-half process, which was really intense, but it was good. I mean, you learned a lot of stuff. Besides that, first year in, we worked with elementaries, middle schools, high school. We did student focus groups to see what the kids really wanted to eat. We sat down with them. We brought in new products. We did taste testing, asked the kids what they liked, sent surveys out to all the kids, got all that data, and then we ended up switching over some products. So we switched over some chicken, we switched over some pizza lines, and we really want to hear what the kids like. So we really want to take their feedback and incorporate it in. For the middle schools, we did some grab and goes, healthier versions. K through 12, we implemented vegan meals. In the past, it's usually been the high school that we offer those to, but we implemented that for K-12 all the way across the board. Yeah, we've done a lot. And so, farm to school, harvest of the month. I always think it's really important for kids to know where their food's coming from. So we had Perfection Parfait come in, and he did a little spiel on sweet potatoes, how they're grown, what products you make out of them, give them samples of it. Same with harvest of the month, pick 'em a stick, some items that the kids don't usually see. We sampled those out so they could get the opportunity to taste it. Kale, we talked about kale. We also brought in, I talk about this all the time, and I guess it's just because I'm so proud of it, but we do the farm to school, so we promote dairy, so we partnership with Wisconsin dairy farmers in Wisconsin. And so we actually pulled yogurt from Odyssey, which is produced at Klondike down in Monroe. So we brought that in and we promoted dairy with each of the elementaries. We still have 2 left to go. So with that, I got an idea. I'm like, I'm gonna call Klondike and see who ships their milk in the area, who ships their milk down to Klondike. And so it just so happens that I happen to know the people.
Got a little farm girl in her background.
Yeah, I'm like,
Brings that to
so-
work every day. It's
So I
great.
happen to know the family that shipped down to Klondike, so I reached out to them and they were willing to bring one of their cows in. So we've been doing a cow visit at each of the elementaries and promoting dairy, so we do the Odyssey yogurt parfaits, and then we bring the kids out in groups and we show the kids the cow, and we're like, this is actually a cow that produced the milk that goes into your yogurt. And it could be any cow, but it means more to me, I guess, because of my background, that it's the actual cow that produced the milk for that yogurt. So I have 2 more schools to do, New Century VAS and Cornell Elementary, so they're each gonna get their cow, and we're gonna promote that. So that's one thing I've been really excited about.
Thank you, Robin. And she's here to answer other questions tonight as well. Now we're into the kind of the boring spreadsheet portion of the presentation. We wanted to give you a little state of the union that kind of essentially proves that we're serving about the same number of meals on an annual basis. So again, I'm going to use the restaurant analogy. If you have smaller margins but serve more meals, you can make a little bit more money. You're never going to make money if the meal you're putting in front of your customer costs more to produce than you're charging. That's where we're at right now with some of the things we're doing. And Robin has to weigh that every day. If our high schoolers could have orange chicken 5 days a week, these numbers would be much higher with participation, but it's not as good for you and it costs a lot to produce. So Robin can only do it once a week, but those are the weeks that we end up having more participation. So in general, we're here really to have a conversation more about cost related to the commodity. Robin is finding some efficiencies on the staffing side. That's a constant check and balance to make sure we have enough folks to serve our students, but at the same time, she has to balance a payroll. Everything in Fund 50, benefits and hourly pay, healthcare comes out of Robin's Fund 50, has nothing to do with the district's account unless Robin runs a negative budget long enough that she no longer has a fund balance. Then school districts, and many are in this position, are put in the spot that we have to transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 50 to balance Robin's budget. So we don't want to put the district in that position that we'd essentially be pulling out of the classroom to balance her budget every year. That's why we're crowning tonight. Next is just a 4-year history of what's gone on with the fund balance. So as you can see, and I think the board should be aware of this, 21, 22, and 22, 23, we were getting virtually 100% reimbursement from the federal government because of COVID. So participation rates mattered, but it did not matter as much as it does now in terms of paying customers. So we built up a healthy fund balance over a couple of years. Every school in the state did. And then we've been in the position the last couple of years that commodity prices have gone up. We haven't ticked them up in check, but in some regards, we've been kind of okay bleeding down that fund balance to, in general, kind of take it easy on our families regarding what we're charging for paying families to have either breakfast or lunch. So you can see our fund balance has gone from 1.9 million in 2022, 24-25 wrapped up at $1 million. We expect the 25-26 budget to actually be to wrap up fund balance around $800,000. So we're kind of running a deficit budget at this point. Next, we're going to just kind of go through, and this is a big deal because it ties to our breakfast recommendation. Over the last few years, our school district has had fewer free and reduced lunch students. I think you've heard Dr. Clarity and myself continue to talk about the price of living in Dane County, in particular our school district, either for homeowners or renters. And I think this is a direct reflection of the fact that this is a really expensive place to live, and there really aren't rooftops for everyone who wants to live here in terms of a wide band of kind of economic viability or ability. And that's had a direct impact on Robin. The fewer students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, the fewer claims she can make to the state and feds to get reimbursement, and it's part of the reason we're here tonight. And we've got kind of some historical data to kind of walk our way through this a little bit later. So tonight we are going to talk through breakfast in a little bit more detail, but also make some what I would consider to be modest changes just to our meal prices for lunch. So the next slide, we did a little comparison chart of what area school districts are charging for breakfast. And Robin, you can tell me 10, 12 years ago, we made the decision to move to all free breakfast. It's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's based on a slide that's coming up
It is.
next to explain.
So as you can see, we at this point, we're the only district
Yes.
that Robin could run comps on. I think we're the only one in the county that offered door-to-door elementary breakfast for free. And it worked when we had high-need schools, and Robin will talk to you about that in a little bit more detail. But as cost of living went up in Dane County, our free and reduced lunch population goes down, we qualify for less federal money. And there's a kind of a blanket you can apply to a school if they have enough free and reduced lunch population that free breakfast was viable, and it no longer is. So we're going to make a recommendation to the board to take that up a little bit this evening. And then lunch prices in general, we're still trying to stay kind of at the district or at the county average as far as lunch prices, but we are recommending some increases there as well. And we'll certainly bring these back, board members have questions. So Robin, can you just talk a little bit kind of through the history of, it looked like 2020 and 2021, we had 5-6 schools that qualified for this. Tell us a little bit like what it is and why it had such a big impact on breakfast.
Sure, so breakfast in the past, when we switched over to free breakfast, we were able to handle that because based on 2 years prior, you had to be at 40% of the kids eating lunch for free and reduced. So then previous 2 years, and it qualifies you for severe needs breakfast. So what that means is severe needs breakfast, you get higher reimbursement rates. And we had 5 schools that qualified. So we were essentially carrying ourselves with that program. We were able to fund it.
And then do it district-wide.
Yeah.
Our reimbursement rate was so good.
Yes, because the reimbursements were so good. So we were able to carry that program. Recently with now that, like we said, the free and reduced is dropping. Back in the day, we were at almost 35% free and reduced, and it's just gradually been going on. So now we're at, I think, 23% is what we're at. So you can see it was really important for us to make sure that we were capturing everybody to eat those lunches, not just free and reduced, but everybody. With the lower rate at free and reduced, we're just not hitting that 40% anymore. So this year, we had 2 schools last year that qualified. 1 school got bumped off this year, so we have 1. That school is actually going to get bumped off for next year, and we're picking up another school. So it's going to be like a trickle effect right now. We're teetering at like 36%, 37% at the others. So we really need to just get those kiddos to eat. So in order for us to get those reimbursements again to be severe needs. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now, and that's why it's becoming kind of an issue with the free breakfast.
And we'll get into some details on that in a second. So breakfast this year, this is kind of the breakfast continued slide, will cost, essentially Robin, the Fund 50 account, $100,000. And if we moved to breakfast for $1 and participation rates stayed relatively the same, for next year, we'd have a $50,000 profit, which then I think gives us a little bit of time that odds are 5 or 6 years from now, whoever would be sitting in these seats would come back and say, we're losing money on breakfast again. We're going to have to raise it to $1.25. But we don't want to do this on an annual basis. And we still know that this would be the cheapest breakfast in town. You know how important it is for our learners to start their day. But a family that would be able to pay now, it would be $20 a month to get 20 breakfasts, which is still a deal. And we're still offsetting the cost that actually Robin puts into a breakfast in some regards, but we do believe it's kind of a happy compromise to make sure that we're not continuing to sink this budget. Because I don't want to put the board in the position that we're having to add a budget line that is $200,000 Fund 10 to Fund 50 every year, and that will just continue to snowball. So our recommendations are summarized down there on the bottom for our meal price recommendations. And there are some very small increases, others that are in line with kind of the average around the county. Certainly open to board feedback regarding these changes, but we do believe this will put us kind of back in the spot that we're getting close to a balanced budget. Again, Robin will have $800,000 of fund balance and we'll have a little wiggle room over the next few years if she runs negative, but we don't want to be put in a spot like this. There are school districts in the area that have 10-year plans to dig themselves out of a giant hole because they let us get away from them for a while and didn't make adjustments like the ones we're making tonight. My summary slide says this. We've said it again and again. We've got rising costs and cost of food, labor, benefits, and we've lost a bunch of federal reimbursement. Fund 50 has lost $650,000 over the last 4 years. That's not sustainable. We're recommending to the board, and we're certainly interested in some dialogue, $1 for breakfast, modest lunch price increases. These will get us to, we're hoping, a slight surplus budget for next year, but we believe that these are still in line with the market. Robin competes with Quick Trip every day, and we couldn't do $7 lunches, or you're going to have more students leave. So we have to keep the prices in check as much as we can to make sure it doesn't have a huge impact on participation. We'll take questions from there. Yeah, Chris.
So I have a hard time always with blanket policies when not all students, not all families are equal in regards to income. And so I know that our numbers are going down in regards to low income and homeless students and families. Is there a way to re-look at this budget and how we apply it? And if you are at a certain level, you can still qualify, especially for elementary school.
It's a good question. We should have already clarified that.
Okay.
If you qualify for free and reduced breakfast,
Yep.
you get a free breakfast. That already exists.
Thank you.
So this would essentially be the families that are above the income ratio that have previously been getting a free breakfast, now pay $1.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yep. Good question. Any other questions on this?
I just want to elevate the gratitude for first of all, to have Robin here. Just thank you for being present in our meeting, for us to get a full update about food and nutrition. We talk about it through some of our policy reviews, but it's really nice to have your voice and presence here and to be able to extend gratitude for all that you're doing and have done in your role for the past 2 years, or almost 2 years. Just the level of transparency and outward sharing about all of this information, I think, is so impactful. Maybe something seemingly small, yet not, that we've gotten this much information from all of you, historical context and understanding of our comparables. I just think this open dialogue is so important. So families know and understand all the things that this team has thought about in going into this. And the big concept being, we can't run a deficit to be able to provide food for students. Right? We
Exactly.
are trying to function also as a financial institution, as in any household, any organization. And so that sweet spot that you've kind of alluded to, Chad, of not trying to swing the pendulum so far, but really trying to have a bit of a long vision here. And just looking at our comparables, even with the increase in prices, it feels like we're hitting that sweet spot like you've talked about.
And we could have gone a little bit lower, but then we're back here in a year having the same story and taking things up by a quarter.
Mhm.
So it's our hope that this stabilizes for at least a few years, depending on what goes on with inflation and the price of goods, that this will put her in a better spot in her budget.
And to not be like, we're making a profit in the Verona area school district.
Yeah.
It's right to buffer and create that.
Right, and in some regards, it would be, for Robin to make $100,000 next year is a good thing. She's giving herself a little insurance for what happens the following year. And she has the right, if we actually do spin off a little bit of a profit and we need a cooler, Robin pays for the cooler. If we need a new heating oven, Robin has to pay for that. So it's legitimately, she's running her own restaurant. So everything that goes into it, she has to she has a budget for it.
I did not realize Fund 50 was staffing everything. I am
Oh,
somewhat
it's-
embarrassed to say that,
she
but
runs
thank
her
you
own
for that
little-
clarification, that literally everything is out of Fund 50 for you.
And
Yeah.
we'll have freezers going. We've already had a high school freezer go down here last year, and a $20,000 bill hits and it goes right to Robin's budget. So yeah, it's a real thing.
Do we have any data from other districts or anything like that backing up the assumption that is kind of built into the projections you were coming up with, that we're not going to lose too much on total numbers of breakfasts served? Because just like anecdotally from my position, everyone I know at the elementary level who gets breakfast only does it because it's free.
Yeah.
And like, if it's not free, it's like the difference between free and $1 will have a lot bigger barrier than going from like $1 to $2. Because some people only do it because it's free.
Well, let me see, and Robin, you can check me if I'm wrong. We are still losing money on $1 breakfast if the Haynes family pays.
Yeah.
So if participation went down for our paying families,
Yeah.
that is not a budget buster for Robin.
Okay.
What she needs to continue to do is recruit the families that actually need that breakfast the most each day and try to get as many free and reduced lunch students to have breakfast with us to start the day. Then we get reimbursed for that. So if anything, the assumptions built into this, we've got wiggle room on the back end because it's still costing us more than that.
That was my question. Thank you.
Good question.
I just want to share a comment. I have 2 kids in the district, and I'm the cook at home, and I know how hard it is to feed kids, especially 12-year-olds. And they always talk about, they remember their lunch, number one. Number two, they like what they get. So we should chat, because I need some help. But I appreciate everything that you're doing, and as we all know, breakfast is incredibly important for our kids to start the day. But the variety, the health, I love the component. Where does your food come from? That's awesome. So great job.
A picture of the colony that
Mhm.
goes in slide deck. I love
Yeah.
how it's cool. All right, any other questions for Robin? Robin, you can stick up here with me if you want. We had one, I could not make the memo I sent in to you regarding rental fees into a PowerPoint that made sense. So Grayson, who Dr. C mentioned earlier, is also an intern for Janine. And all those crazy spreadsheets I built into my memo, Grayson made. So Grayson's actually like teaching Janine pivot tables and all kinds of crazy stuff. But I built a summary memo around some modest increases, in particular the world of our Performing Arts Center for equipment rental. As an example, we just had to replace a soundboard in the Badger Theater and ended up moving the 4-year-old soundboard out of the high school into Badger and had to replace the soundboard at the high school. That was a $40,000 expense. So unlike Robin, who has to balance her budget, the world of the Performing Arts Center and our pools are not balanced. These are community buildings, but they do come at a Fund 80 cost and the cost of the district to provide those services. And again, these are just modest market rate adjustments that we did a whole bunch of research on, and we're not trying to stick it to all of our renters. It's just making sure we're somewhere in line. And I feel confident saying you get to rent one of the better theaters in southern Wisconsin for what our average, kind of average rates to use the equipment. So that was all the research that went into that memo in particular. Certainly can answer questions, but again, bring it to you for board discussion. You are liaisons to the community and just want to make sure you're in the loop on it.
I have a comment on that, not necessarily a question. And you and I have talked about this, so you know my opinion. Even at these rental rates, we're still losing money on it.
Yeah.
Because our equipment, our spaces depreciate at a higher rate than what these rental prices are. And that's something that we should do, but I know we are doing this, but I just want to put in the space to differentiate between community organizations and non-community organizations and what they have to pay to use it, because members of our community, it's their tax dollars that funded these buildings. They should get to use them and benefit from it. People from outside of, organizations that serve people from outside of our community shouldn't get to benefit from that in the same way that our community does.
Well said. And we've talked about this too, just the staffing also that goes in, like the human aspect of, having all this usage in our building. It's amazing, and yes, giving back to our community. And we have so many staff members that give so many hours to keeping our buildings and our facilities working and functioning for groups outside of the school day. So again, to just ensure that we can provide our staff wages to compensate them for the time and effort put in, that needs to kind of match then.
Yeah, so in fact, the PAC is almost a 24/7 facility at this point. It's always being used. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for all the data, and Grayson for doing this magic.
Yeah, there's some fun spreadsheets. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I don't think we've got anything else. Thank you guys for the discussion, and I think we're in a good spot. Amy?
Thank you again, Robin.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
So moving on to our final aspect of superintendent's report, the 26-27 academic standards.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. Last piece of the superintendent's report is to share our 26-27 academic standards. So each year the board approves our standards. This document should look pretty familiar. It's the one that we've been using for several years now. Tonight you will be asked to vote to approve those for next school year. The only change that you will notice this year is that we did add human growth and development standards. So at the June 1st board meeting, at the direction of the board and the process that the ad hoc committee went through last year, the charge from our board was to go forward with a curricular resource review process for human growth and development. In order to do that, we have to have standards by which to assess any of those curricular resources. And so we did go through a process. Wisconsin has a state statute that guides human growth and development, but does not have actual standards themselves. So we had a team, Mr. Zingshine led a team to look through our health standards, our social emotional learning standards, the CASEL standards, as well as the national sex ed standards, and try to pull from that what best aligned with what the Wisconsin State Standard statute requires for human growth and development. So you will see those standards tonight. June 1st at our next meeting, we will bring forth the resources that were recommended, and we'll have members of our team to be able to speak to that process at both the elementary and the secondary level. But all the other standards that are in there have been the same for the last several years, and really are given to us by the state of Wisconsin, so we can be in close alignment with the rest of the state and what we know to be high standards of rigor for our students. So I'll take any questions here, otherwise you'll get to vote on this during board action.
I just want to give one reminder that I maybe am remiss in having not done prior to this, is that anyone watching or maybe looking at the board recap, that all of these things we've been referencing, so this entire list of academic standards, everything that Chad referenced in terms of rental fees, is all available for public viewing through our board docs. So that can be a great way, if you are watching after the fact, to be able to see in real time what we're doing, because slides would become very dense very quickly. And then, as always, just the transparency of being able to peruse anyone in our community all the things that you're talking about. So
We
thank
can
you.
go and add our academic standards to our website with nice little icons that make it a little less dense as well. So those live at all times. This is the formal document that we ask you to approve each year. Those are available. We want our community to know what we're teaching our students, how we're choosing our curricular resources, and the standards that we're holding them to.
And just assuming then, if you didn't mention anything other than HG&D standards, that everything else is fairly similar, if not exactly the same from last year.
Correct. Yeah. The state goes through a process to update different curricular areas each year. There's a few that are in process currently, but none that were finalized yet. So you can see that we have the dates that they've been updated. Quite a few happened in 2024. These human growth and development standards were in 2026. But we do stay up to date with the latest state standards. So as the state brings together committees and reviews what those standards look like, then we review those and adopt those ourselves.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, thank you, Amy, for your time and updated information. So board will revisit that shortly then as we get into board action. So we'll move into public comment. I see 2 public comments. So let me know if I'm missing anything else. Emily O'Brien, and you can speak from where you are. You're welcome to come up to the table, really wherever you're most comfortable, as long as everyone can hear.
Okay, this is fine.
Great.
Okay. Thank you for having us. Again, I'm Emily O'Brien, and I'm speaking on behalf of the students in the upcoming Savannah Oaks 8th grade geometry cohort. All 10 families are united in expressing our concerns regarding the proposed plan for advanced math. Our ask is that students receive full in-person instruction compared to their peers at Badger Ridge and at Core, aligning with the district's mission and equity principles. Currently, geometry students at SOM receive instruction through pre-recorded videos. Our parent group advocated for an in-person geometry teacher through the SOM's principal, the executive director of academic services, and the superintendent. The proposed solution for next year is a blended classroom of advanced learners. In this proposal, the geometry students receive instruction for half of the class period. In the remaining half, the geometry students work independently in the same classroom while their teacher is giving a lesson to the algebra students. While we appreciate the move from online to in-person learning, the proposed solution isn't acceptable for the following 4 reasons. First, the reduced instructional time and teacher access. Dividing a class period between 2 groups of learners results in a diminished access to instruction and guidance. During targeted skills time, the teachers would be actively teaching another group, thus limiting their availability to provide support. While we understand the perspective that half is better than none, it is not better than 1, which is the district standard for math education everywhere else except for this class at SOMS. Number 2, equity consistency across schools. At Badger Ridge and at Core, 8th grade geometry students receive a full period of in-person instruction. The proposed model at SOMS creates an inconsistency that leaves students less prepared for high school math and at a disadvantage compared to their peers. It's also important that the staffing and instructional quality are consistent across all middle schools to ensure equitable access. Number 3, learning environmental challenges. The blended classroom model presents practical concerns regarding student focus and engagement. Students working independently may face distractions while the teacher is instructing the other group and does not allow for small group work. These conditions are not conducive to an optimal learning environment. And number 4 is implications for the advanced learner program. We are concerned about the precedent this model sets for the future of the new learner program. Advanced learners benefit from deep exploration of concepts and increased academic challenges, not reduced instructional time. Establishing a dedicated geometry class period at SOMS would strengthen the program, ensure consistency with other schools, and support the long-term success. We respectfully request that the district reconsider this model and explore solutions that provide SOMS geometry students with a full in-person instruction compared to their peers. So thanks again for your time, and we appreciate any discussion, clarifying questions you might have while our parent advocates are in attendance.
Thank you, Emily. All right, board, moving on to our board action. So our first proposal, let me get back to our slides, is to, and thank you, yes, our board meeting will continue, and as we've done, any transitional moments, I certainly appreciate those that have been in the audience, thank you. We are going to vote on the 26-27 proposed academic standards. Board members, I would accept a motion to approve the academic standards as presented. Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. All those in favor of approving our academic standards as presented for 26-27 signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then we dip into our 5. Welcome back. So we're moving into results policy 5, which is journey of a lifelong learner. If you don't mind, Amy, if I just could give a
Jen,
little.
if I could just interrupt.
Oh, yes.
Just because, so when they give public comment, we can't have a conversation about it because it's not noticed, right? Is that correct? So only saying that when somebody comes and speaks, I want to make sure they feel that we value their opinion, the time they've taken. And I feel like it would be good to share the reason why we want a discussion with them, just so that they don't feel like they're leaving. I talked to them, like, where's this going?
Correct.
You know what I mean? So I hate
yes.
to give anybody that impression that the comment is made and then it's just dead.
That's a great clarifier.
Kind of
Thank
come
you.
off that way.
Thank you.
If we don't address the clarification, I'm saying, thank you for your comment. This is wonderful. We love to hear this. However, you can't have a discussion as you kind of requested a discussion and questions. And I kind of felt awkward not addressing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And to also add clarification, I had gotten questions about process, and I actually shared that with the people that were here tonight to give that comment that we don't engage in conversation unless it's directly related on the agenda. So thank you for the clarification. That particular group did hear that from me prior, but I think that is an important thing to elevate here for the sake of the community too, that, yeah.
That way nobody's like, I would love to get more public comment.
Yeah,
it's always great to have
it is great to have the feedback
voice
for sure.
in the meeting. And I just don't want to deter them because they might feel that they're not, we're being listened to, but where is this really going kind of.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
follow up too, so folks know that too. We
Okay.
always follow up with anyone that comes to our meetings. So
I just wanted to bring
Thank
it
you.
up in case anybody's listening. Okay,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yep.
So just a lead into R5. So for community members and even reminder for the board, and John, I'll have you speak to anything as well. We felt really that it was important to put aspects of our strategic framework and embed them into results policies, including Journey of a Lifelong Learner, just to really acknowledge and honor the commitment our community had in creating our strategic path and the Journey of a Lifelong Learner traits, and to make it really clear for leaders, for educators, for us, that we are really trying to embed this in what we do as a district, and that this isn't something that hangs on a sign that we smile and nod at, but this is truly being infiltrated across all areas of teaching and learning in our district. And I think you'll share this, that we've had JLL pieces embedded in every results policy so far because of the templates we've used. So this is almost a summary or synopsis. Hope you don't mind my lead in, but just kind of grounding us in where we are with this particular results policy.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. We left the numbers to Chad tonight. This results policy doesn't have a whole lot of quantitative data in there, but more of the stories of our students and those connections that we've made. And Jen's point, it really was a summary. It was a good exercise for our team to be pushed with, whether it was language arts or behavior policy or physical education and health, to be able to make some really explicit connections back to JLL. So really this actual results policy itself was pulling all of that data back together to tell that story. And then excited that Mrs. Beam could join us tonight as principal of Country View, who also brings all of those stories to life. So with that, just a quick reminder of the Journey of a Lifelong Learner. The Journey of a Lifelong Learner has 6 skills or attributes that we are looking for our students to develop across their time in the Verona Area School District and beyond. We even talk about lifelong learners, so this applies to our staff as well. And so we have personal growth, communicator, collaboration, self-awareness, empathy, and resourcefulness. And these are the skills and attributes that we're helping our students to hone across their time and helping our staff to be reflective about as well. So I'll read them to you, but obviously you can see the questions that you pose to us as a board for each of those to begin thinking about to what extent are our learners engaging in this sort of skills development. And so the actual report, we included all of the quotes and all of the examples for each of these. I think the summary statement when it comes to our leadership moves and our next steps, we're continuing to reflect on how we can be intentional in lifting up the journey of a lifelong learner. So to President Murphy's point, we don't just want this to be a poster on the wall. We don't want it to be in our shiny annual report without really making sure that this lives in the way that our students engage in their experience each and every day. And so we're continuing to reflect on where can we be more intentional in calling out these skills with our students so they have an understanding. I'm cultivating empathy, right? This is what this looks like. These are goals and things that I'm going to be working on through my entire school experience. We've identified a few natural entry points. At the secondary level, the academic and career planning process is a natural entry point. That's where we're asking students to reflect on what are your strengths, what are your areas for growth, and want to be able to uplift these skills as a part of that. To think about where have you already grown, because we've benchmarked out the Journey of a Lifelong Learner. Here's where we would want you to be as a middle school student. Here's what that would look like to show empathy as a 6th grader. And so that's been a natural process for us with academic and career planning at the secondary level. At the elementary level, social emotional learning instruction remains a natural connection as well. So morning meeting, opportunities for students to engage with the 2nd step curriculum are the obvious places that we can make these connections. And as you saw throughout our results policies, we made connections to music, we made connections to art, we made connections to other subject areas and want to be able to continue to do that. So ask Ms. Beam to join us tonight to tell us a bit more about what that looks like at Country View and be able to paint a picture so you can get an idea of how we're really bringing this to life in a way that charts and graphs might not actually show.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And so how we have groups that are happening all year long, and it's based on our SSIS screener data that we teachers engage in, and also students self-report at some of the grades. But the one I want to talk about tonight is that we have an executive function group, and it's 6 fourth grade boys, and they named themselves the Trees Group. And so we interviewed them, and John was able to see a couple of them at our time with us. And one of the questions that we asked was, if you had to explain to your teacher what we're practicing in this group, what would you say? And the one student described a mindful moment that we learn a skill, that we do an activity to practice that skill, and then we close with a mindful moment. And then the other student that I interviewed just talked about the mindful moment to help his brain reset and pause before learning skills. And then the other question that I asked was, can you tell me about a time recently when you used a group skill and they were on planning, focusing, and staying calm, and when they had used that within the classroom or within our Country View community. And the one was, I use it every day, I make a mental list, and then I use that mental list throughout the day. And the other student gave an example of using self-talk in the Gaga ball pit, where he tells himself, you've got this, and it'll help calm his brain. It's a very competitive game. And so the student used that. And then I asked them what feels easier now after they've completed their group. We're finalizing their group times together. The one student said that they're feeling more focused and calm by using that self-talk and open to other people's ideas in collaboration with peers. And then the other student was just that they are staying a lot more focused during instruction in class. So I thought it was important to hear student voice around our groups and really see what's the impact of that. And then the other thing, well, one of the many things that we do, but is Pride Packs, and that is a very fun time where we try to do it once a month. And the focus of this is just really joy and community. And so students have the same Pride Pack throughout their years at Country View, so they go to the same teacher. And it's about 10 to 12 kids, because we use all of our adults in our building to host. We run it as a morning meeting where everybody circles up together, they greet each other. Then there's a share based on the sentence stuff that the teacher gives them. They engage in activity that's like a community building activity. And then they do a close before they head back to class. And we do that once a month. And like I said, even kindergartners are going to different parts of the building, and they'll have that same teacher from K to 5 who'll engage in that. So that's bringing this to life and contribute.
Thank you for those examples. Definitely examples of personal growth in your executive functioning group, building some self-awareness to help students understand what do they need to continue to work on. Your Pride Pack's really helping to support collaboration and understanding across your building. So just wanted to provide a few examples of what does that look like in the daily life of a student, and how do we make sure that the journey of a lifelong learner comes off the page and actually lives within their experience. So we'll pause there for any questions from the board.
I do appreciate that this is kind of unique data, right? Because it's one thing for us to say, we're implementing the JLL traits, but I mean, if our students can reflect it back, can no one understand the verbiage that we think we're using? I mean, that really is where the feedback, I think, does live and embodies, the achievement of this result is how our students can actually reflect and name this. So I think it's just such an interesting way to look at this report in such a qualitative way, buried in the quantitative pieces of the, verbiage and whatnot. But it is just an interesting way of reflecting about successes in our work around JLL.
So the AI summary was different for this one than any of the other results policies. So it's interesting to see what that pulled out of all of the different students.
Right, right.
Some of that, we're discussing things now.
Yeah, questions, discussion, right.
Awesome. I want to bring in some of the end of the year site visit that I was at. I was the only board member there. So I can speak authoritatively about this.
Yeah.
And nobody will know that I'm lying.
Except for Jeff.
No, I think it was a really, really powerful end of the year visit in this context of this report, because not only did we see that data that is being just highlighted about student groups and how they are reflecting some of these values back, but what I saw that was so powerful was the using these sorts of values to kind of triangulate back to ask the questions about whether or not you're doing a good job of educating students. Because so often when we ask that question, it's in technical terms like, what are the test scores? How are we teaching them? You know, what standards are we following? What materials are we using? How are we explaining? Where are our I can statements? What I found particularly powerful at that end of year site visit there was the focus on developing better ways of implementing the gradual release of responsibility with students throughout the year. They had some data that they were looking at that seemed to indicate that students are really ready to learn, but needed to be left to their own devices a little bit, as that's an important part of learning as well. And that came out through this kind of discourse around, you know, journey of the lifelong learner. How are we promoting some of these aspects that we want our students to get? And I don't know that that sort of angle would have come out. I mean, teachers talk about gradual release all the time, but it's pretty hard to see whether or not that's working unless you start talking about student agency or student voice or, you know, all these things that we want our students to do in the journey of a lifelong learner. So in that way, I think that these values that have been articulated by our community through our strategic planning process are actually serving a really great purpose as like a check and balance to a lot of the technical work that our professional staff does on the regular, to kind of ask these questions and come to really, really kind of solid answers. That's what I saw at the end of the year site visit. It's like really, it's like we're able to zero in on what they're doing to make continuous improvement in a way that you might not pick up on if you're just looking at standards and test scores and that's so yeah, so that's just a, you know, huzzah. But also I had my note in here that this is, I think, a worthwhile endeavor to have these results. So yeah, that wasn't really a question.
Well, thank you for taking the time to kind of consolidate and encapsulate, you know, these multiple layers that we've seen throughout the year with our results policies kind of in this one moment where we could just take the space to elevate, like John said, the importance of this particular work that you're all doing. Thank you for coming to share this beam this evening and to your team. And we look forward to more site visits. You know, we try as board members to have as many of us there as possible. John, thank you for attending a country view. I was glad we could hear some of your updates here at the board table.
Thanks for the intentional spaces. As you know, when we're talking about math or literacy, we often are talking about that content area, and JLL has been at the bottom, and we made some intentional connections. That wasn't always what made the video.
Right, the dialogue,
made the presentation. So I appreciated the protected space really to lift this up and the important work, because the intentionality of our school leaders and our teachers is definitely there, and we see that in what we hear from our students. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, if there are other questions, anything else you want to surface, but with results policies, again, our charge is to determine if we feel this results policy is achieving reasonable progress or if that has not yet been achieved. More discussion or motions?
Make a motion that it achieves
Okay.
reasonable progress.
So a motion by Christopher that R5 monitoring report achieves reasonable progress. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving results policy, or results 5.1 through 5.6, journey of a lifelong learner, as achieving reasonable progress, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's been determined as achieving reasonable progress. Thank you. And then moving on to operational expectation, which is instructional programming, which we talk about kind of the interesting layering of having an operational expectation around instruction. So I'll have you guide us through what that looks like after we shift for results back to OEs.
Yeah, so I think we think a lot about the OEs as how are we creating the conditions for the results to happen, right? So what is it that we need to have in place that are just non-negotiables in terms of our systems that we need to be really responsive to then be able to lean into how do we make sure our students are growing as scientists and mathematicians and communicators and collaborators. And so what you'll notice in OE 11 is it's really calling out things like, do we have a service delivery model for special education? Do we have standards? We just voted on those standards, but are we using those standards? Yes. Do we have an assessment calendar? So you'll see the assessment calendar there. Are we providing opportunities for students to make their course selection and to show these are the courses that I'm interested in, and then we build the schedule off of that. And so you'll see that evidence within the process. 11.5 asks us where we evaluate our programs that are new or innovative. 11.6 is around digital safety. Are our families checking off that acceptable use policy? And then finally, just instructional minutes. Have we actually protected the minutes for students to do this work? So very different than the rest of the results policies where there's a lot of narrative and a lot of evidence and charts and quotations. Really, this is, have we created those conditions? And how do we live out those commitments? And so tonight, just to highlight a few of them, many of these pieces are things that we update each year because of course we need a new course guide each year, or yes, we need to prove that 100% of our IEPs are happening annually. But the changes that I will call out, some of the leadership moves that we've made this year, particular to OE 11, kind of twofold. The first is within program evaluation, so that's within 11.5. OE 11.5 asks us to have an evaluation process for any innovative program. So whether that's adding AVID or leaning into foundations or IYT or any of the other programs that we're trying, it's asking us to have an evaluation process. And so in the past, we've sometimes highlighted those innovative practices here for OE 11.5. This year, we decided to actually document and codify what does that process look like. Often we will hear some wonderful idea from a colleague in a different district, and somebody will come back and say, hey, let's buy X, or let's try this program. And we haven't had a really scripted process of how do we evaluate if that's a good fit for us? And then if we do adopt something, how do we make sure that it's having the intended impact? And so this year we went through a process to develop a program evaluation process for our existing resources. There's some things we've had for years. How do we know that they are actually impacting student learning and the student experience in the way we want? And then for a new resource, something that somebody went to a conference and learned about this, how do we decide if that's something that we want to bring to the culinary school district? So that was the evidence that we included this year for 11.5 around innovation and evaluation. And then the other 11.4 is around the high school course scheduling. So 11.4, the indicator asks that we make sure that students have an opportunity to express their interest in which courses they want, and we use those course requests to build our schedule. So our schedule never looks the same 2 years in a row because it's built off of the requests of our students. One note this year, we did make a slight adjustment in our high school scheduling practice. So previous to this year, students would make course requests in January. That would tell us this many students want history or AP US history, this many students want geometry, and we build that schedule. In previous years, then we came back to students later in April, and we had a sort of priority list. We made that schedule available to students, and then they got to make an actual request to say, I want AP US history. I can see AP US history is running first hour, second hour, and third hour. I want it third hour, maybe I don't want to get up and be here for first hour. So they would actually be able to sort of build their schedule by class period. In talking to our students, we realized a few things. One, it was creating a lot of anxiety and pressure on students to figure out where do I need to be and how do I quickly fill in. Like, I really wanted to be in culinary and I never got to be in culinary. How do I fit that in? So we weren't able to match as many students with their preferences scheduling that way, and it was creating additional anxiety for students. It also wasn't allowing us to be as efficient. 7th hour and 1st hour were not super popular hours for courses for many of our students. And we've also seen what that looks like, and the board has had discussions about wanting students to take advantage of as many classes as they can here at the high school. And so based on that feedback from students and the desire to match more students with their preferences and be more efficient in maximizing our resources, this year we've eliminated that second round of student scheduling. Students gave us their course requests in January. We've used that to build the schedule, and there's amazing software now that will help us take all of those student course requests and place them into their schedule. Students will receive their schedule in the interim August, right? We're in welcome back, similar to how we've done it at the middle schools. So we're still in compliance with OE 11.4, and students are making those requests, and we are building our schedule off the request. The only change is that we've actually eliminated that additional round, as we found the idea was to build student agency and let them practice that skill, almost like scheduling yourself for college courses. And the feedback that we had is that maybe it wasn't having that intended impact and actually had some disadvantages as well. So slight change there, but we're hoping that simplifying the process will actually allow us to meet more student needs along the way. There's some fascinating technology that can make things work that are a lot easier than trying to match specific hours of the day. So just 2 practices that are slightly different this year that we wanted to highlight within our leadership moves for OE 11. So I'll pause there if there's any questions.
That's cool technology.
Yes.
So it looks at their available time, the classes offered, and you like automatically insert where it makes the most sense.
So you just put in all the student course requests and it builds their schedule,
Yeah.
right? So, because what we were also finding is when students went in and made a request, again, 7th hour was probably not the most popular. So the 7th hour classes might be really small, but then the 5th hour classes are really large. And so that just has implications for teaching as well as where are you fitting students in different
The correct
sections.
schedule that balances it for the students, the staff, and the teachers, which is awesome.
Yes.
It's a win-win. I
For
mean,
many a
it's
decade,
win-win.
yes, for many a decade, I happened to run into the individual human that did that for the high school for a very long time. I just saw her recently, so I can only imagine. Yeah, being able to have technology. There are some of the benefits we talk about with some of our new technologies. I did find that really interesting as well. And just being new to coming into the high school as a parent, I thought the way that the scheduling just discussion was laid out very clearly in terms of the value of picking your priority classes and your alternates, and just, I thought that was well done. So, yeah, I didn't realize that was such a big change. So thank you for that.
This year. We did also look at the data initially too to see is students making these course requests the second time eliminating or diminishing the number of course changes we have, and we were finding it wasn't actually having a huge impact. So instead, the hours that our counseling and our student services team were spending on the second round of course requests was significant. And now they're able to spend that one-on-one conversations with students about their 4-year plans and being a bit more proactive as opposed to solely the technicalities of scheduling. We know that in the fall and at the beginning of second semester, we of course will have course changes, and that will happen, and they have a process for that. But right now then, this spring, being able to meet with every single student one-on-one and talk about what are your goals, what's your 4-year plan, how can we support you, how can we connect you to all the amazing opportunities here is really impactful while the computer does the hard work of spinning that schedule.
Tedious. I like the program evaluation process. That's
Yes, I was just gonna say that, yeah.
Just highlighting the, is this effective? Is this, is this something we should continue to offer? That's just so awesome, as far as like just finding efficiencies and resources. So I'm impressed by that.
Yeah, the robust nature of the form itself too. Do you anecdotally just have one example that comes to mind of something that's either been recently evaluated or suggested? Because I'm curious, like, who's on that team? Like, who is the evaluator? If you just have something to bring this to life more.
Yeah, we started with
concretely?
a central office team, and we started with mostly curricular resources.
Okay.
So things like, we'll be headed into a curricular resource review for math next year. We've invested in Dreambox for years. How do we know that Dreambox is having the intended impact?
Yeah.
What does the data say? Or especially with our Act 20 interventions. So we have students that are on reading plans. We're using UFly as one of the interventions. Sunday is another. Lexia is another. So we've taken each of those through to say, how many students are meeting their progress monitoring benchmarks with that specific resource? And is it result of, are we not implementing it properly? Or is this actually not the right fit? So we've really started with many of the curricular resources that would be interventions or, like in the case of DreamBox, a core resource that in heading into this process next year for curricular resource adoption, we want to better understand. Teachers can build habits around things, students can build habits around programs, but where do we actually pause to say, what's the value add here? Is this the best use of our time, of our money, of our training?
It's kind of like having a review for the subscriptions that we all have. And pay for it on a monthly basis. Is this actually helpful?
Do you know what you're paying for? Do you know what you're subscribing to? Yeah.
But now we're doing it on a district level for resources that I'm sure are much more expensive, so.
Yeah. So thank you for that example.
Yeah.
That's really great. Really, really great. Board members, as a reminder, because this is operational expectation, that our charge is to determine whether this is meeting expectations or not meeting expectations. But still, any further questions or discussion, just that reminder as we're moving through this frame. And certainly a motion is welcome.
Motion to approve that we are meeting reasonable.
Meeting expectations,
Meeting expectations, yes.
okay, for instructional programming. Is there a second?
Second.
Give that one to Joe. Is that Joe over there?
Yep.
Second by Joe. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving OE 11 instructional program monitoring as meeting expectations signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Amy. And again, reminder to community, there are videos, all the materials available through board docs. Thank you again for your time.
Just for clarification, board members, as we go to the next topic, does everyone have a copy of OE10 policy in front of them?
It was linked in board docs, yeah, so
Where's good?
great. Welcome, Nate. Thank you. Yeah, we have a first reading in a potential adjusted OE10, just given state statute pieces that Nate, you can clarify for us about some adjustments that we can decide on in terms of our learning environment operational expectation.
Yeah, so Act 42, or 2025 Act 42, asks that schools have a policy regarding the use of wireless communication devices during instructional time. You guys might remember I came and talked to the board about this in January. It was the second board meeting in January 26th about. And I think at that presentation, I went into a bit more detail in terms of what the law requires. But today, I'm not going into all of that. Today, I'm making a recommendation for a change for OE10. And there's kind of two items at note in the statute that's leading me to make this recommendation. First, the statute actually says that school boards have to adopt the policy. So having the board stamp of approval is required in this sense. And second, there's this like monitoring component to this policy too that's being enacted by DPI, where once we have our full Act 10 policy framework, we actually have to send it over to DPI. And then if we make any changes to that policy framework in subsequent years, by the fall of that year, we have to send the updated policy to DPI. DPI, nor the statute have told us what they're actually going to do with that, but I imagine if they're collecting these policies, they're looking to see if school districts are fully compliant. So because both of the language of the statute and DPI's monitoring component, district administration is recommending that the board adopt this amendment to OE10, so that there's a clear record of both OE10 and the district's administrative rule that corresponds with it, being the entire policy framework or the entire Act 42 compliant policy framework. So our recommendation is that OE10 require that the superintendent maintain an administrative rule compliant with Act 42, or alternatively, the same thing, but also require that administration return and provide kind of an annual update on Act 42 implementation or wireless communication device implementation.
Can I clarify something right off the bat?
Yeah.
So in terms of the actual policy language, basically that very first piece, OE 10.2A,
Yes.
is kind of the draft of the revised policy language. And then the piece I think you were framing is then in terms of indicators, like what do we have a preference of in
Yeah.
terms of indicators then on reviewing this policy?
Yes.
Okay. And the indicators are, suggested by admin, right? Kind of owned by administration, but we, do the
Is it
smile
reasonable?
and nod, yeah. Do we find those indicators to be potentially reasonable for the data that we want to get?
Correct, and yeah, any part of OE10, the board can actually ask us to change it. So like, that's why we're asking for your stamp of approval to add this OE 10.2A. If I can kind of point to another part in our policy framework where I think this is akin to, I think I've talked to some administrators about this. This is sort of like our bullying policy, where in 2010, there was a statute that says school boards have to adopt a bullying policy. Now, our OE10 does mention bullying and actually directs that the superintendent has to prevent all forms of bullying. But OE10 by itself doesn't actually meet all of the requirements in the statute in regards to bullying. But OE10 plus our administrative rules 522 and 522P in tandem make a fully compliant framework for bullying. Same as adopting this OE 10.2A in tandem with our 533 administrative rule regarding wireless communication devices would operate as a fully compliant policy framework.
And with this being a first read, then this is you looking for our feedback on any potential changes and the indicators presented so we can come back to having an official.
Yes, but also I would want to put a first read on the record, so if you guys can vote to have this be your first read,
Sure.
either with option 1, option 2, or if there's some amending right now in your real time, we can also vote to have it be the first read with whatever additional language that the board decides needs to be added for it to be considered a first read, for you to feel comfortable with it being a first read. Yes.
So I just had a question around this proposed indicator under option 2, indicator 2. Because every time, whenever I read these OEs, what I try to see are like, what are the logical components set out in the OE? And then do we have indicators that line up with each of those logical components? So, for example, the OE states that we're in compliance with state law and support a positive learning environment. So immediately I'm kind of drawn to option 2 because then I've got an indicator that lines up with you're supporting state law, an indicator 1, and an indicator 2 that I think is trying to get at how are we verifying that we're supporting a positive learning environment in how we regulate wireless communication devices, right? So my question is just around indicator 2, an annual summary regarding implementation of the rule and any recommended revisions. That makes sense to me, but does it need to spell out anything more directly pertinent to wireless communication devices and positive learning environment as it's defined above?
It definitely could. Does it need to? And honestly, that's a question that should probably be answered by.
Right, I mean, I'm trying to get at, like, is it reasonable? Like, I'm trying to imagine what an indicator 2 might look like. Because my concern would be that if the language is overly vague, that we might, or future boards might not get a report that clearly addresses how our policy is maintaining a positive learning environment, again, as defined. But yeah, I'm just kind of probing.
Yeah, so some options there, if we kind of look to what other OE set up, is you could have us bring actual hard data for that indicator. There are kind of code violations in the progressive response model that might equate to using wireless communication devices in a way that's inappropriate or against policy. And we could use maybe some of that data to monitor whether the district's administrative rule and this OE10 is actually leading to a positive learning environment, whether there's a reduction of those types of codes or whether there's an increase or anything in between. So in comparing with other operational expectations, yes, we could add a hard data component here to make it a little more specific. So yes, future boards wouldn't have to kind of guess.
This is one of those things, like, it's been a long time since we've talked about the reasonableness of a indicator
Yeah.
or a policy. It's been a policy language. So it's like a whole different discussion that we've had for a while. So to remind everybody, I am very nitpicky about my language. and can argue about a comma for a very long time. And we need Meredith here to tell me to stop. But.
Stop.
we don't have
I mean,
that.
right?
Stop, I'll be Meredith.
Or I tend
We're
to
not
look at
there
the,
yet.
or that the indicators of what data will I want? And does the indicator lead toward that potential data point, right? Because that's really what the consequences of the indicator is, what information then comes to us as board members. That feels like we can satisfactorily say that the board is meeting our expectations on OE10. And so I'm kind of seeing this as, is the basis of this simply the existence of a cell phone policy, and is it the existence of and the efficacy of? That's kind of, am I boiling it down into a way that kind of makes sense? Because indicator 1 to me says it exists and it's aligned with state statute. And the second indicator gives some sort of substantive, like, and so what about it aspect.
And I guess for that indicator too, like, there's no reason that the board can't tell us like, hey, in this annual summary, I want to hear this, or I want to see specific data points. But of course, if the board wants that language in indicator 2 is like hey, this time next year, I actually want to look at this data, or I want to hear of these accounts of students, staffs, or other community members, then the board can definitely add that.
I mean, I think option 2 is more reasonable to me than option 1, if reasonable is the standard, because option 2 kind of gets at, whether you call it efficacy or, supporting a positive learning environment with that second indicator. I think it could be, that kind of more vague language could be considered reasonable. So I don't know if we need to specifically tie it back to the language of supporting a positive learning environment. Again, you read this and it says implementation of the rule, and that is part of the rule.
I'm also leaning toward option 2.
Question, and just for clarity, what does state law say, how it defines a positive learning environment?
State law doesn't
No.
describe a positive learning
Right,
environment.
that's our
It would
whole
be,
intent.
yes, it would be the board's definition of a
Who's-
positive learning environment.
More the point, to make the point that is vague. And so that's for us to then define what that means in relation to the application of this.
So are you leaning toward option 2 then as well, of keeping an
Yeah.
aspect that kind of leans
Yeah.
into, and then how does this impact?
Yeah.
I am as well, leaning toward option 2. Joe or Juan Carlos, any particular sentiments on the draft?
I prefer option 2 with the more data beyond just the existence of the policy.
Same.
Is there a
So-
motion?
To officially have this as a first draft, is that, by the way, still our
First read.
first read? Thank you.
Can I just ask a procedural quick? Don't we only have to do the first read for the policy portion? We've never done that for indicators before.
No. The indicators.
We've always
indicators
approved
are
the
here.
policies
Yeah.
first and then done the indicators after.
Yeah.
All we can do with the indicators is say, this is reasonable or this is unreasonable.
Yeah.
As a form of giving guidance, but their admin owns them. So that's why I was kind of like trying to word my question, like, do you think this is reasonable?
Yeah.
But, all right.
Dr. Clarity, do you think this is reasonable?
So,
Most of it, we're leaning toward option 2, it's as board members.
yeah. The issue is that the reason I understand John's concern about a slight vagueness in annual summary, because I think we're jumping, positive learning environment also means perception of our students. Students not having access to a phone during class, many will mark them as being negative towards their learning environment. So it's not direct cause and effect, like just because the perceived learning environment of a student will not increase because
Take their phone
because
away.
they take their phone away.
Yeah, interesting.
So I just think the summary in itself would be our mechanisms of getting feedback from students, I'd be very curious what our climate survey data looks like following that, and then have those discussions there. So, but I think to the point of the board's expectation for wanted to talk about it. Without that second indicator, there's not a space for that conversation to happen. But I just don't want it to look like cause and effect, like increased environment because someone's okay, that's not necessarily going to be the case.
Right.
But to that point, what an interesting thing to talk about at the board table.
Yeah.
I mean, right, if students are perceiving their learning environment is worse because they don't have their phone, families are gonna hear about that, communities are gonna hear about that, so why not bring it up at the board table and have some conversation around other data and impact as well?
To speak to that, though, I mean, the admin also owns all the definitions. And I find the definition of positive learning environment to be entirely reasonable. So, yeah.
Good point.
So then going back to, in terms of first read
Yeah,
of our actual OE 10 language.
right. I think there should be a motion to have this policy be considered the first read. And then you can also add support for option 2 if you'd like, but seeing as we own the indicators, like you said, you do not have to.
I would make a motion to declare this as a first read of our OE 10.2A draft policy language. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. Any further discussion on that aspect? All those in favor of approving that this be a first reading of our adjusted OE 10 policy language signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it sounds like at least the consensus here is leaning toward option 2. So when we take a second read with the remainder of board members, I think that's where we focus our attention.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
Thanks,
Thanks for the draft language. Okay, moving on to board updates. Anyone have any updates? Christopher?
Yeah, I had a chance this past weekend to attend the Always There Fair at Ridge Middle School, and it was phenomenal. I just want to call out to all the staff, Miss Amelia, for all of their hard work to put it together, all the community resources that came together to offer support for LGBTQ students and families and community. We had a blast. I haven't seen my kids run and play in a long time, and it was just a really positive environment. I think everyone that attended felt very uplifted and valued, and were able to access some important resources. So just a call out, great job, and wonderful way to celebrate our diverse community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other updates?
I don't want to sound a board update, but let's wait for our board members to go first.
I was just going to share other calendar things, so go ahead.
Today, we're excited that we were, the Verona Area High School was able to host Governor Evers here for a visit to look at 2 programs and also visit a kind of a bilingual fair that we were having in space. The 2 programs visited were IYT, Improve Your Tomorrow, as well as Sources of Strength. We want to shout out not just the staff that helped organize it, but also our students in those spaces were outstanding, and having engaging conversation with our governor. We're appreciative of the support of public education that has continued to be at the heart of his speaking points. And and again, to our students who really leaned in and had the type of high-level conversations that we expect to have with any adult, but especially elected officials, we're appreciative of the students as in that moment. And there.
It's always exciting
Yeah.
to be able to celebrate with someone as historically connected to the Verona Area School District as Governor Evers, but to just be able to celebrate some local leaders and to see our students. I got to come in at the tail end, but wow, just to see them sit in a circle and dialogue with the governor was really impactful. Yeah, and that fair was awesome. So just to lift up all the staff that helped put that together, it was right next door. So many different booths and organizations looking for connections for students who are looking for service hours or employment in the summer. Just such a fabulous thing. And some classes purposely brought their students down. It was open during lunch. I mean, there looked like quite a few students that were making an attempt to be in the space. It was so cool. Couple calendar reminders for board members. Just making sure that your end of year site visits, Lori, thank you for calendaring all of those, but ensuring that you are keeping track personally of the ones that you are signed up to attend. And then the TWE capstone presentation is this Thursday. So again, as much as possible, being accurate on your RSVPs for Lori's sake for any notices that need to go out. We'll talk about some other dates we shift forward. We just want to put those back on everybody's radar. Okay, and I'll move on to superintendent's consent agenda, ensuring that you've looked over the linked items. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, the board's consent agenda is approved superintendent's consent agenda is approved. Then moving on to board consent agenda, ensuring you've looked at our board minutes and OE12 notes. Thank you, John. Forgetting who that was already. Christopher, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, our board consent agenda is approved. Future dates, I know we do have a board meeting before graduation, but oh my gosh, graduation is gonna be like tomorrow. So reminder, board members, make sure that you have tried on your regalia, that's the term, like ASAP, like yesterday, because if there's any issues, we need to get that handled yesterday.
I needed it, yeah.
And I will need help putting that thingy on the hood.
Yeah, I definitely need help.
I don't even remember any of that. Similarly, I think you've already sent the calendar invite for the 1:30 meeting that happens prior to graduation where we need to confer the graduates. So we do need a quorum for that. So again, making sure hopefully board members, we can at least have a quorum. If you can't stay for graduation, potentially at least for the 1:30 piece. So checking the calendar for that. Any other dates, things I'm missing? All right. With that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Christopher. All those in favor of adjourning tonight's meeting signify with aye.
I
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned.